when they have reached the bottom of like this kind of feeling, they just suddenly stood up and realized that I have my value too, and I won't allow you to judge me because of this and that.
Yeah.
Probably it's a way it went for other people. Do you remember any kind of similar experience that led to this transition?
I don't know. I've never hit rock bottom, like something like that. But because all this was internalized, so to say, like we grew up very conditioned thinking, you know, brown skin is not that great. You need to be fair skin, blue eyes, you know, blonde hair, then things like that. You need to be straight and things. And so like that has been a very internalized, and I guess I conflicted with myself a lot when I was growing up then. Around middle school and high school time. That's like the most important time. And that's when I was like, you know, not, you know, we see other people who are like me, but they're like darker skinned or also the same color brown. But there weren't a lot of people who were fair skinned. So that's why I was just like, but if they wanted to be fair skinned, I'm like, that's kind of impossible because like, just in this group of students who I'm in class with, like, there's only like maybe like 5 or 10 who were light skinned. Who had like red hair, which was very weird for us because we're like, how do you have red hair? You're Mexican too. So that was very odd for us too. But, so things like that, so that was coming. So I never really hit rock bottom where like it hurted. I guess more rock bottom was like with my sexuality when during, so I'm not sure you know about this, but confirmation is after you do communion and you're like, so confirmation is when you do 2 years of it. You know, you're supposed to know your, I don't say in English, but los restos, like, how to say Padre Nuestro and things like that. But you have to do it, like, the point of it is to do it voluntarily. Like, you voluntarily want the Spirit of God to be inside you and to go on with your life. But I grew up in a very Catholic household. I never really believed in it because I was more scientific. And I'm like, there's no way this is true. And so my mom was like, where do you get this notion, blah, blah, blah. And so I'm like, we learn about evolution in school. I'm like, how is it possible like that, blah, blah, blah. So, like, we would be fighting about that a lot. And so
your original binding with this was not voluntary, but it was imposed by the family.
Yeah, and so, like, and that's with a lot of people, too, in my age. We're just, like, we can't really separate ourselves from our family because they're always behind us. And so, for communion, like, from the very beginning, so I'm like, I'm not doing communion because communion is all about voluntarily doing this. I'm like, and you're doing this against my will. I'm like, I do not want to do this. I'm like, I don't want the body of Christ in my body. And I'm like, I don't believe in this. And so it would go on back and forth, and it went like that for 2 years. And even though I fight with her, I'm like, I still did it because in a way, so I'm like, there's kind of no point in fighting with her. She's not gonna let me do whatever I wanted. And so I think like right before we had to do like the whole initiation of that thing, we're supposed to write a letter to the cardinal who comes, and we're supposed to say like why you want to or why you don't want to. Like, it's your time to say this. And so I told the cardinal, I'm like, I don't want to do this because of the many reasons. Like, I can't believe in a religion that goes against, you know, the foundation of love. I'm like, I was always like a big into person. Like, I believe in love and justice. And I'm like, you guys don't believe in love. You guys don't believe in homosexuality and them being together with the same gender with anything else. I'm like, you guys don't believe in transgenders. I'm like, you guys don't believe in a lot of things. I'm like, and I can't stand for a religion that does that. Especially how that was portrayed in the churches. I'm like, I can't do this. I'm like, I'm not going to accept this. And like, especially as a woman who associates as a different sexuality, I'm like, I can't do this to myself. And so,
when did you realize that about yourself?
I think it was definitely during high school time. I think it was like in sophomore. Like, I've always appreciated both genders, and so like most of my crushes were men. But then, I was thinking about women too, and I'm like, oh, they're really pretty too. I'm like, it'll be pretty great dating a woman. And so I thought that was like very passive and stuff like that. But then I was like, but I'm like, I don't think other people like take it to the extent like they want to date them and want to be in a relationship with them. Like, I don't think that's what people really do. And so, I will see sometimes other women, and I'm like, I'll have crushes on them. And I'm like, okay. Like, I don't think I'm straight anymore. And I'm like, alright, I'm gay. And so, like, I accepted that, like, very easily. I was like, oh, I like women. Okay, that's great, too. And so, it was a very fast decision, to be honest. It wasn't, like, me fighting myself. I'm like, oh, I can't be this. It was me, like, I accepted it. I'm like, alright, this is who I am now. I'm like, that's another layer to who I am. And so...
But you must have been exposed to, like, materials that have...
Oh, yeah, definitely. I think what usually exposed that was... This is very nerdy. But in middle school, because my school is right in front of the library, I would go to the library a lot. Every day, actually. And I would read, like, a lot of manga and anime. And so, like, that had a lot of... because they didn't have, like, the traditional... Western ideals. Sometimes they have like same-sex couples, especially like, the anime Sailor Moon, where like the most famous canon lesbian couple was like Neptune and Uranus. And so like in the U.S. when they came here, they're portrayed as cousins, which is very weird because there's still like that romance subtleties. And I was like, they're cousins, why are they like this? And so it wasn't until like I rewatched it and in Japanese, and then it was like, oh, we're not cousins. They're actually, like, they don't know who they are, but they're lovers. They're not related in any form. And so when I was reading the actual manga of it, that's when I was more exposed to, like, the idea that same gender is, like, there's love with same gender, too. And I was like, oh, that's really great, actually. Like, I was never, for some reason, even though I grew up in that belief, because Sailor Moon was, like, so implanted to me when I was very young, I always had the ideology of love. Like, love prevails everything. And so, like, no matter what it was, like, love would help you through your life. And so I grew up with that thought. I'm like, oh, love. And, like, love is the greatest thing there is. And, like, even, and so I'm like, I'm a huge romantic. I fucking love it. And so when I learned about, like, that as myself, I was like, great. And I'm like, I have more love to share. And I'm like, and it's really fantastic. And so, like, that's when I came more interested because of, like, my thoughts and ideology of, like, of love prevails everything. And I'm like, it's pretty great. I'm like, love is a pretty nice thing. And so when I wrote the letter to the cardinal, I don't know what happened. I think they just picked me on randomly. I'm pretty sure it wasn't randomly. Like, they opened my letter, which they shouldn't have. And then they called me and they wanted a meeting with my mom. And I was like, oh, I wonder what this... I didn't know what it was for during that time. And then the father's like, so we opened your letter, and like, and you said you don't want to do this. And I was like, and I told him straight out, even though my mom's like, I don't want to do this. I'm like, I don't believe in this. I'm like, I'm not an atheist, but I'm more agnostic. I'm like, because there's not enough proof to say like God does exist, but there's also not enough proof that He does. And I'm like, so I'm in the middle. I'm like, I'm not sure. And so then I was telling not only that, but because you guys seem to preach about, like, you guys don't believe in homosexuality and stuff like that. And so, like, my mom stayed quiet because, like, it was pretty much the conversation between me and the father. And the father's like, so what are you? Because I never stated what I am. And so I'm like, he's like, are you a lesbian? And I'm like, no. I'm like, I'm bisexual. I'm like, I love both men and women. And, I'm attracted to them. And then he's like, I don't think that's the right thing. And I was like, excuse me? And he's like, I'm like, that is not a thing. I'm like, you cannot love a man and a woman. Like, you must... Because you're a woman, you have to love a man. That is how it is. And so he told me, I recommend you getting therapy. And like, have you thought about going to therapy? And I was like, I don't need therapy. I'm like, I'm not mentally ill or anything like that. I'm like, none of this. I'm like, no. And it was very strange because one of my close friends, actually, she's very Catholic, but she knows for sure, like, she knows, like, sexuality isn't really talked a lot in the Bible because she reads it all the time because she's a catechist teacher too. And so a little bit off the side of that, but I was like, I'm not gonna do this. I'm like, you can't. I'm like, I don't need help and blah blah. And so then my mom was telling them about why she wanted me to do this. And then, so I was pretty much sitting, and it was pretty much then them talking. And, like, even though I didn't want to do this, I still did it in the end because my aunt was going to come. And then I didn't want to say that she didn't want to come because everybody was giving me the talk of, like, why God is so important. But they didn't know that the sexuality aspect of it. And I kind of didn't want that because, in a way, I didn't want to be ostracized by them because that would definitely have happened. And so I just told him, like, yeah. So in the end, I just did it. I was like, look, I'll do it. I didn't even memorize stutter, so I was just like, I'll do it. And so I got the blessing. My saint is Joan of Arc and everything. And so by the end of it, like, and so, like, my parents, especially my mom, completely forgot that whole fiasco. She was like, we're not going to talk about this ever again. And I was like, we're going to discuss about, like, the sexuality aspect of it because you completely disregarded on that aspect of who I am.
So you would freeze that part.
Yeah, and so, like, me and her has still frozen that part, like, because it's, I don't know, I kind of, like, I really want to discuss it with her, but in a way, like, I don't really want to damage anything between us, because, you know, family is so important, and I love going back home.
Yeah.
And so, I kind of don't, I know my mom recognizes it, she definitely does, and I think she acknowledges it, but she doesn't want to say it out loud, and I think that's what needs to happen, is, like, we both need to, like, acknowledge it, like, look, your first daughter ain't straight, let's talk about this.
Probably it's better to leave it in that ambiguous of
Yeah, like,
because like I think even your mom or people who love her most need some real experience to truly sympathize. All else.
Yeah. And like I know my mom will accept me like some point. Unless she's not gonna completely like you can't be my kid. I don't think she'll ever do that because you know I'm her first kid and like we've done a lot of things together, and so I think. But we'll definitely, like, I know for sure we're definitely going to have the talk at some point. And I know, like, it can't be, like, when I'm 50. Like, it has to be, like, soon. But I don't know, like, each time, like, I kind of wanted to avoid it. But we sort of discussed it before I left for college. Because I was telling her, I'm like, because I was mad in a way. And so I told her, like, the reason I'm leaving is because you don't accept who I am. And then me and her were having a very powerful talk. It was a bit awkward because my other two sisters were there, and I was like, "Fuck, they're here." That was like between me and my mom, and so I was like, "You don't love me." I'm like, "You don't know, you don't accept who I really am and everything." And then that's why my mom started crying because that really hurt her. She's like, "What do you mean I don't love you?" And she was telling me like, "This is a thing I didn't expect from you, but it's gonna take me a while, but I definitely still love you, like no matter what." And so like we were just having this very powerful talk right before, but we didn't really delve into it, like not like a full deep conversation. And then I don't think it was the perfect time too, because both of us were crying and we were already like in a very emotional state, and so I feel like we would say whatever we wanted to say. And so like I definitely think we have a more in-depth conversation where we're both not so emotional first of all, and just be in a scenario where like I can't have my other sisters there too. And so yeah, and so that was one of the biggest things. And so after that thing, I told my friend who was very Catholic too, and then she was like, "That's very wrong." And she's like, "I can't believe even the father told you to get therapy." She's like, and I work with him and everything, like, and I can't believe he said that to you. And then she got really mad, and I was like, her name's Beatty, and I'm like, it's cool. I'm like, even though I guess there's a really huge LGBT community here, I'm like, I just know, like, because I'm different, that that I was gonna be shamed for it for sure. I was like, I kind of expected it, because if I was gonna go to a different place, I'm like, that might happen as well. And so I'm like, no matter what. And so she was just she was just really sad that had to happen to me. And then she's like, I'm so sorry, blah blah. And she just was like, but you know, I'm like, you are accepted. And I was like, oh, but what about your mom? Because your mom was super Catholic too. And then she's like, she's the same too. Like, we grew up in it, and like, even though we grew up in a very Catholic household, like, we do believe that, you know, God loves all and blah blah.
Yeah, you talk a lot about love, like ever since your realization of your bisexuality, you talk about love too, and the way your mom treats you, you talk about love too.
Yeah.
And I think that, if we really think about love, is something that really crosses all that kind of artificial borders. Because I have that, strenuous conversation with my mom too, when both of us cry, and the most hurtful thing that I hear is that my mom says that I don't love her. When I do, it's just very painful. But
yeah. So like that was a very tough time. That was in my junior year, and that was the most stressful year, because that's the year where like colleges look at your grades the most. Your junior year, so like I had to step up my game and everything. So like that was happening, and then the confirmation, and then me coming to terms who I am, and then like all these other things. So it wasn't really hitting rock bottom, but me hitting against the wall, and realizing I can't move past this wall because I'm not coming to terms who I am and things like that. And then there's all these other factors too, like going to colleges and stuff like that. And so like pretty much after that junior year was over, that summer, it was more, what did I do that summer? I don't think I did anything. I think I was being lazy.